Not only are Disney and Lucasfilm currently focused on Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker 2 live-action TV series, but they are also focused on the new Star Wars trilogy, also known as the fourth trilogy by the creators of Game of Thrones, David Benioff and D.B. Weiss. This is Mike Zero. If you guys are new to the channel, do make sure to subscribe to see future Star Wars content. Now, one great thing about the future of the Star Wars franchise is that we do know that after the end of the Skywalker saga that Disney and Lucasfilm will be focusing on more projects. In case you guys did not know, Kathleen Kennedy confirmed over at Star Wars Celebration that they are planning over 10 years worth of Star Wars movies throughout the 2020s of what fans can expect to see after Episode 9. Now, these past couple of weeks or so, we've been learning a whole lot more about the future of the franchise, and when it all comes down to Star Wars X, also known as Star Wars Episode 10, this is where things begin to get very exciting. Now, what's really interesting is that it's described that the first film of the new trilogy, which is dubbed as Star Wars X, is set to begin principal photography during the month of June this year, after the summit between both Kathleen Kennedy, David Benioff, and D.B. Weiss take place during this month of May. It said that the Star Wars X will involve George Lucas approving many of the different concepts that will be introduced to kickstart the new trilogy. Though it's described that George is not directing, he will be an advisor for the film, as well as the other stories that D&D will come up with. It's also described that Benioff and Weiss are aiming to create a character just as iconic as Luke Skywalker and want to bring Star Wars back to its roots with how George treated the original trilogy, and that DB and David will be given full creative control. It said that there are negotiations in place to keep one director for all three movies, to keep the consistency with these movies and to also match up the continuity. The set designs are said to begin construction in late 2019 over at a new studio where they will not be filming at Pinewood, and that this is the reason why there is a brief break in Star Wars films for 2020. It said that Disney aims to release Star Wars X in 2021, however it's unclear if they are shooting for May or December of that year. The sets for the first film of the trilogy is said to be the biggest in film history, since they will usually require hundreds of extras, since at least the first film will be inspired by Lord of the Rings. So I really want to go over a couple of parts about this. Now, just so you guys know, Star Wars X is just the code name of this movie, also known as Star Wars Episode 10. Now, the biggest question of all is this: on whether or not Disney and Lucasfilm are going to decide to keep the Roman numeral, right, the numerical system for the upcoming Star Wars trilogy, or if they are eventually going to shift away from that. Now, so far, that's just a placeholder, Star Wars X. So what's really interesting to me about Star Wars X is that this is, yes, the first film that's going to kickstart the new trilogy, and that George Lucas is going to be used as an advisor for all three movies and will be heavily involved in the first film, and that David Benioff and D.B. Weiss want to bring Star Wars back to its roots and want to do exactly what George Lucas did with, of course, the original trilogy that was started back in 1977 with A New Hope. Now, not only that, we also know that George Lucas, alright, is also involved with The Rise of Skywalker as well, which is really great to know. Seems like Disney and Lucasfilm are really coming around and turning things around in order to course correct the franchise. So the other thing is this, is that we also know that David Benioff and D.B. Weiss aim to create a character that is going to be just as iconic as Luke Skywalker himself. Now, to me, this is going to take a lot of work. It's going to take a lot of time and focus in order to do that. It's going to take a lot of, tries that may be hit or miss. And I think that, it's going to be a very difficult thing to catch lightning in a bottle again when it comes to developing a character that will be as iconic as Luke Skywalker. It really does make one wonder, how do you really do that? If you look at George Lucas, he really is a visionary. At the time, in the 70s and the 80s, he really did, put, a lot of great stories that were never told before on the big screen, and that's exactly what David Benioff and D.B. Weiss plan to do with, of course, the new Star Wars trilogy, is to create these movies and make them feel like they're going to be an instant classic, make them feel like that they're going to be the quote-unquote original trilogy of our time. And that, to me, guys, I think it really just tells us that they are really aiming to do something incredible and not just for the sake of making Star Wars movies, which is great. which is something that you want to see in every writer making a Star Wars film. That's a big question, right? We do know that, yes, if it's at least going to be set within the Old Republic era, or Knights of the Old Republic, or something around those lines, then yes, Lord of the Rings being a form of inspirational source material would make a lot of sense. If it's going to be stories that are centered on, like how it was developed with the original trilogy, where, let's say, for example, you have one Jedi and just one Sith, then it wouldn't really make a whole lot of sense to base it off of Lord of the Rings. But if it is going to be like armies of Jedi and armies of Sith, like what we got in the original, like what we got in the Old Republic era, I should say, then it would absolutely make sense, pretty much dead on. Now, one thing I will say is that I am very interested to see exactly what Disney and Lucasfilm are going to come up with. We do know that Kathleen Kennedy confirmed just a couple of weeks ago that Knights of the Old Republic stories are in early development. They are in the talks as we speak. So I have no doubt that this is most certainly going to be geared towards David Benioff and D.B. Weiss, as we heard through many of the big reports that everybody was talking about a month and a half ago. Anyways, guys, drop a comment below. Let me know what you think about all of this in the comments. And if you guys did enjoy the content for today, do make sure to drop a thumbs up on this video to support the channel. I thank you all so very much for the kind support, and I'll catch you guys next time.